Hello everyone and welcome back to the Capablanca saga. We are back at the 1911 international tournament of San Sebastian, and it's Jose Raul Capablanca versus Rudolph Spielmann. Now, before we get into the game and talk a bit more about this Rudolph Spielmann gentleman, I would just like to mention that for those of you who are interested in acquiring more vast knowledge, as in the previous video, Capablanca did face Karl Schlechter, and we also mentioned the 1910 World Chess Championship match between Karl Schlechter and Emanuel Lasker. Andrei Terekov, FIDE master from Singapore, made an article about the match between the two of them for chess.com, so I will put a link to it in the description below. It's quite extensive. He says that it took him, I believe he said a few months, but I could be mistaken. Maybe he said like 2 months or something. But it's quite extensive, and if you want, do check it out. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And a lot of you have been asking me in the comments that I should be showing the standings after each round of the 1911 San Sebastian tournament, but there is no such thing available anywhere. But I did check for this round, and I did prepare for a few of them. So after 11 rounds, Capablanca is first. He's 8.5 out of 12. Out of 11, so he's 1 point ahead of everyone else. Those who are close to him are Akiba Rubinstein with 7 points. Rubinstein so far hasn't lost a single game, but he had a bit few more, 3 more draws than Capablanca. Then Dr. Milan Vidmar with 7.5, and Frank James Marshall with also 7.5. So basically Capablanca is a full point ahead of everyone else. Here he faces Rudolph Spielmann. Some of you know him from his brutal games, as he's the master of sacrifice. He even wrote a book, The Art of Sacrifice in Chess, and he was something like, in those days, he was something like Rashid Nejmedinov in his era. He didn't win all that. He won a lot of tournaments, but sometimes he would win 5 games and lose 12 games in a tournament. But those 5 games that he won were so impressive that everyone talked only about those games. And he also has a very impressive score against Capablanca, but we are going to talk about that after this game. So Capablanca has the white pieces, a full point ahead of everyone else in this tournament, and he opens with d4. We have d5, knight to f3, c5 now, this early c5, the Krause variation, and now c3. In modern times, not a move you would consider playing. c4 is a move that comes to mind, but as Capablanca himself also enjoyed playing the Tarrasch defense, for example, with e6, knight c3, you could transpose into the Tarrasch defense, but maybe because Capablanca enjoyed playing the Tarrasch defense himself, he decided to go for a sideline. As you all know, Capablanca wasn't all that much into openings either way. But okay, knight to f6, e3, we have knight to c6, and now d captures on c5. Here Capablanca leaves the center, allows black this, not with e6, but with e5, allows black this massive central control for the price of 1 pawn, as Capablanca is like that. b4, defending the pawn. It's not like, for example, in the Queen's Gambit when you capture on c4, because this pawn cannot be challenged that easily. For example, if you try something like this, you get Queen a4. You have to defend the knight. Now b5, you attack the knight. Knight has to move c6, and black's in big trouble. So after b4, we have Queen to c7, developing, and now bishop to b2, strengthening the d4 pawn. We have bishop to e6, knight b to d2, and now bishop to e7. Spielmann leaves the option of castling both kingside and queenside. We have bishop to e2, and now he decides to castle kingside. Would be a bit safer, as Capablanca already has a lot of expansion on the queen side. We have castles by Capablanca as well, and now rook 8 to d8. We have queen to c2, connecting rooks, also developing the queen, and at some point Capablanca wants to push e4. We have bishop to g4. Spielmann anticipates this e4 idea, and he wants his bishop to already be on g4 when f5 is pushed. We have e4 by Capablanca, d captures on e4, knight captures, queen captures, and now f5. Queen back to c4 with check, king to h8, and now rook 8 to d1. Developing, also countering black's rook on d8, And let's see what happens here. So Capablanca is still up a pawn, but black still has massive central control. He no longer has a d pawn, but by playing f5, he again controls really a lot of space. His rooks are placed excellently, the bishop is very strong, the knight is also very nice, but Capablanca has it's a questionable bishop on b2. If Capablanca can play something like queen b3, if c4 can come, then the bishop comes alive and the bishop will be an excellent piece. But for now, the c3 pawn is actually quite useful as it doesn't allow any knight maneuvers for black. But okay, we have e4 by black. Now knight has to move, knight to d4, and now of course Spielmann does not want to capture here. If you capture, then you fixed Capablanca's pawn structure. After he pushes d5, the bishop comes alive, white will be much better here. So after knight d4, we have knight e5. Black now has a lot of pressure here. The queen is under attack, you have to move. Queen b3, and now bishop captures on e2. Knight e6 is a threat with this powerful fork. So Spielmann forces the knight back. We have bishop captures, knight captures, and now knight to g4. And already, I don't know if Capablanca was aware of... well, if he knew of Rudolph Spielmann, I'm sure he knew of him. He was a very famous, also Austrian chess master. But like I said, he was very known for his sharp play, for his attacks, for his winning of not only tournaments but for plenty of brilliant prizes in tournaments. So he has to be very careful. The threat is, of course, queen captures on h2 checkmate. How do you defend this? You could block it with g3, but after g3, there are you're weakening your king side. There are a lot of moves you have to consider here now. f4 is an idea, e3 is an idea, the knight can come to e5, and f3 also a very strong idea. You could decide to go rook f6 to h6 to put more pressure on h2. So a lot of attacking possibilities. So Capablanca has to survive this attack, and then he will be able to enjoy his extra pawn. Once he pushes c4, then his position improves drastically as this bishop comes alive. Until then, he just has to, defend and survive. So g3 is a possibility, but Capablanca decides not to do it. He goes knight to g3, and he allows black, open hands. Now, again, all of these ideas are possible. Rook captures, e3, f4, rook f6, h6, so many ideas here. And just to show you how rich the position is, let's see what happens if something like e3 is played. Then you get pawn captures, knight captures, forking the rooks, and now you have to capture on d8. Rook captures, queen captures, and now you have to play rook to e1, and the game continues. But there are dangers in the position. For example, if you try something like rook f3, attack the knight, then queen d2, and already black is once again threatening checkmate, and it will be very hard to get out of this. Rook f2, queen e1 check. Now you either give up the rook or you go knight here, and then bishop to h4 will win the game. For example, g3, bishop captures, you just capture it, h captures as the knight is pinned. Now knight captures, rook captures, and queen captures on g3. After the king moves, rook f6 to h6 maneuver will be deadly. So a lot of poison to the position, you have to be very careful. But like I said, if the rook doesn't wander off to f3, if rook e1, then white can still continue playing. But Spielmann goes for f4. And now what do you do here? You could capture on e4, but then again, you have to consider what happens if f3 is played. Definitely an unpleasant choice. If you go something like knight to e2, then again f3. It doesn't matter if you capture on e4 or if you just move the knight, f3 will be very deadly. For example, knight g3, now f captures on g2. King captures, and now rook captures on f2. This is deadly because now you have to capture with the rook, and the rook on d1 will be attacked twice. Rook captures, knight e3 check, picks up the rook. King h1, now you can capture here. Rook captures, you can't recapture with the queen. The knight also defends the rook now. You have to block, knight f1, now comes rook captures, knight captures, and you're up a full piece and have a very dangerous pass pawn. So here, after this f4 move, Capablanca decides to first trade off a pair of rooks. We have rook captures on d8, and now again, you could capture on e4, for example, knight captures, but then again, f3 can be very unpleasant. Once you move the knight g3, F captures on g2. Now after rook to d1, you can go rook to f8, and again there will be pressure against the white king. Capablanca decides against this. After rook to d8, Capablanca ignores his knight and plays queen to e6, pressuring the undefended knight on g4, so why not? But in doing so, he also has to give up a pawn. We have pawn captures, queen captures on g4, and now g captures on h2 with check. King to h2, king to h1, only move, as the queen is also defending this h2 pawn, and now comes queen to e5. Capablanca now wants to push c4. He wants to open up this bishop, so he would also have threats against the black king, and also he's threatening to capture on e4. So queen e5, Spielmann defends against both threats. But the e4 pawn is weak. Rook to e1, and there is no good way to defend this pawn. Here we have rook to d2, now attacking Capablanca's bishop here, and now Capablanca simply plays rook captures on e4. It's a very important move, and it's very important that the queen is controlling the d1 square, so you cannot play rook to d1. If the queen wasn't, then rook d1 would be checkmate, as the queen is still guarding the h2 pawn. We have queen back to c7. Spielmann wants to keep control of this diagonal to be able to have this threat of checkmate here. And here Capablanca finds really a brilliant maneuver that just wins him the game straight out. So feel free to pause the video here and try to take everything into consideration. What is black threatening? What are black's option? What can white do? Here Capablanca simply uses the entire board to create this beautiful maneuver. So I'll give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who have paused the video and have found the idea, congratulations. It's just a wonderful idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, the move is bishop to c1. Not just to save your bishop as it is attacked, but also, like we mentioned, the queen controls d1, so you cannot do any checkmating here. We have rook captures on f2. Now, again, the queen is still controlling h2, rook to f1, now the threat of checkmate. So you found bishop to c1, you obviously saw, okay, rook captures on f2, what next? Now comes the move if you found, then well, you should be a professional chess player. Bishop to f4. And bishop to f4 prevents everything and simply attacks everything. The queen is no longer controlling the h2 pawn, so rook to f1 will be nothing. Rook to f1 will be simply met with king captures on h2, and black has nothing. His queen is still under attack. Another thing you're doing is that you're overloading the queen. The queen has to keep an eye on the bishop on e7. The rook is attacking the bishop on e7, and also the queen has to keep an eye on the c8 square. Black also has back rank weaknesses. If the queen wanders off and doesn't protect the c8 square, then queen to c8 will be checkmate. And one last thing bishop to f4 does, it prevents the rook from reaching f8, which will be crucial in this attack. Here we have queen to d8, the only square from where queen can defend the bishop and the c8 square. But as it often is, now the queen is overloaded. You simply force her to choose between two squares. So what does Capablanca play? We have rook captures on e7. And now you cannot capture the rook. If you capture the rook, we already said, queen to c8 will result in checkmate, as you've cut off the rook's control of the f8 square with this bishop to f4 move. This bishop to f4 is simply amazing. You have to give up the queen captures, this is checkmate. So after rook captures on e7, Rudolph Spielmann tried one other idea. We have queen to f8, now threatening this double attack against the bishop, but here it's a winning position for white. Capablanca can win in a whole lot of ways. But he decides to finish with style. Here, Capablanca, or you can try to pause the video and try to finish with style yourself. I'll give you a couple of seconds, just for you to decide what to do. You could just move the bishop, but that's not finishing with style. For those of you who have finished with style, congratulations, you are an excellent finisher with style if you played queen captures on g7. But if you haven't, still, I mean, you could win in other different ways. This is what Capablanca played, and it was in this position that Rudolph Spielmann resigned the game. Why did he resign? Well, there's only one reply here. You have to capture with the queen, and then comes rook to e8 check. You have to block with the queen. Now you can either go queen to f8, then rook captures, leaves the white with an extra piece, or you can just congratulate white and say, okay, you're the better man, play queen g8 and allow this very nice checkmate. Bishop to e5 check, only move rook f6 and bishop captures will be checkmate. But yeah, Spielmann did not allow this, so even though he was a fierce player, he played a very nice game, created a lot of attacking chances. It was in the end Capablanca who finished his attack with great style. Which often happens when you play against when a strong positional player plays against an attacker. But still, I mentioned that we are going to revisit the remark where I mentioned that Rudolph Spielmann is one of the few players that did not have a negative score against Capablanca. He had an equal score against Capablanca, 2 wins, 2 losses, and 8 draws. And yeah, not only that, but he wasn't just the only player to not have a negative score against Capablanca. He was only one of the few players to beat Capablanca more than once. Also a great achievement, and he was the only player who did not have a negative score against Capablanca and has beaten Capablanca more than once. So even though, like I said, he was an attacker, an aggressive player, his games often won brilliancies, but due to his style, he very often lost games due to this style, and this has resulted in him not winning so many tournaments as he might have won if he played differently. But like Rashid Nejmedinov and many others who employed this style throughout chess history, maybe he didn't win so many tournaments, but those games that he won, those were the ones that to watch. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it and that you're enjoying the coverage of the Capablanca saga so far. Do check out that article I mentioned from chess.com. So after 12 rounds, Capablanca still in the lead with 9.5 out of 12. That's an insane result for one of the strongest tournaments played for that time. Really insane, and really gonna be enjoyable to see how this whole series turns out. But yeah, I would like to thank Richard Benson, Peter McManus, Thomas Gallagher, Brian Curran, and Enrico Puglisi for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with some more interesting content. Thank you all, and have an excellent rest of your day.